What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Reese Motorsports, Corey's Garage, and your home for the Franken-7 drift car project. It's been a week or so since I had a little update, so I realized after watching the last video that I never actually got much info into the Holley Terminator X system, but I have since, I guess the last real in-depth video, swapped out the eBay Chinese standalone harness for a Holley Terminator X system, which I've watched a lot of videos and a lot of reviews and read a bunch of stuff on it, and it seems like the no-brainer go-to for anything LS swapped that it doesn't belong into. In this case, i.e. a 1986 Mazda RX-7. So, yeah, so I went ahead and got that. Everything is installed and hooked up. I was having a continued issue of crank almost want to run for a second, ran for maybe 3 seconds total, and then it would just kept flooding out. And what I believe was going on was the eBay injectors I had, which were 42-pound EV1 style injectors, were basically just, well, for one, I've got that 340 liter per hour fuel pump in there, and I was running a Corvette C5 style fuel filter and regulator combo. Well, I didn't realize when I originally set that up that that 340 fuel pump overpowers the regulating feature of the Corvette regulator, or filter and regulator combo. So I think I told you about, I tried a fuel regulator from eBay, just a cheap little $20 deal, just to try to dial it back a little bit, and I was able to dial in the fuel pressure, but the injectors, just being, you know, $50 cheapo injectors, I'm pretty sure were just staying open way too long and literally dousing the cylinder in fuel and the spark plugs in fuel, and so not allowing it to fully spark all the way. So I did take them out. I tested them, and they did stay open pretty much well after, you know, took power off of them. So I had a little jig. In my last video, I showed you guys how to clean injectors at home, and I just tested out the old injectors, and at least half of them, so 4 of them, were hanging open, which was making it not run because it was just leaking too much fuel in there. So so after that, I went ahead and ordered just some stock LS6 injectors, and that was the injector cleaning video last time. So cleaned all those, got all those working, just took all the new O-rings stuff off the eBay injectors and put them on these, and you know, put everything back into the billet fuel rails I had, and hooked everything back up, and I could not get the injectors not to leak on the passenger side. I thought they were pretty much the same length and height. I guess the LS6 injectors are just a tad shorter overall length, and so when I thought they would be properly seated in those eBay fuel rails, I kept having a leak on either cylinder 2 on the passenger side bank on the front, or 3 and 4. So I never could get it to sit totally snug and keep the fuel from dumping out, and that was getting really frustrating because, you know, that's just like one minor thing, but, you know, you can't have fuel spraying out. Obviously, it's got to stay in the engine and stay in the fuel rail. So since then, I had a buddy on Facebook, Donnie, out in Arizona, that he had an LS6 fuel rail available and some extra injectors. So ordered those from him. I think he shipped them out Thursday, so they're supposed to be here Monday or Tuesday. So yeah, so I'm just kind of at a pause right now with that. So basically, I'm going back to just a stock OEM LS6 injectors and fuel rail. With talking with a friend I've made in Canada that has a LS FC swap as well, Cole, he was saying that with the Corvette fuel regulator that you have to be careful, because when you hook it in, if you have the lines crisscrossed, you can basically ruin the filter inside by putting too much pressure to it, and that was one of the first things I ran into with fueling this thing up was, oh, I'm not getting any fuel out of the rail. That's weird. Or fuel to the rail, and it's because I had my hoses backwards. So crisscrossed those, and then, then we started our starting attempts. But so basically, I just ordered, not just, a couple of nights ago, a reusable Edelbrock fuel filter. So just an inline. So I'm basically I'm redoing part of my fuel system essentially. So I've got a new Edelbrock fuel filter on the way, and I'm basically just going to convert it to returnless. So I'll be getting rid of one of the fuel lines, basically the return line going back to the tank. So I guess I can just cap that off, but I'll do a little research and see if that's okay to do, but should be. And then also the little spouts, the little nipples on the eBay fuel regulator I've got, they were 1/4 inch or 5/16. They were really small. I got it to where it wouldn't really leak, but it was really sketchy because I had to take electrical tape and wrap it around the nipple and try to clamp a high pressure fuel clamp on there tight enough to not make it leak. And yeah, that was just sketchy. So I went to a local auto parts store, just no name, and was looking for a 1/8 NTP pipe thread to 3/8 barb, and they did not have it, and they called their sister store and they didn't have it, but the guy said, you could check a hardware store, just don't tell them it's for automotive, and they'll probably have exactly what you need. So sure enough, went to our local Ace is the place, went to the fittings and found 2 of exactly what I needed. So I'll show you guys right now just kind of my unfinished kind of redo of my fuel system. And so I originally had these 2 holes right here was where I had the regulator. I've since moved it over here to the shock tower. You can see now I've got my 3/8 barbs on there. So I've already got my feed line hooked up from I still have the Corvette regulator on here right now because the old one hasn't showed up yet, but I'm going to be switching that to the Edelbrock just because I don't want to worry about this return line and run 2 lines all the way back to the tank. So there's going to be a Edelbrock fuel filter here in a few days. And yeah, so I think that turned out kind of nice. Another thing I was worried about too with everything being right here on the fuel rail is it's right on top of the headers, and leaking fuel and hot headers just doesn't sit too well with me. RX-7s are kind of jokingly known to be kind of a fire hazard anyways, so I didn't want to add to that anymore. So yeah, so I moved the fuel filter that was down here, like pretty much at the where the firewall starts to turn into the underside of the body, which is the stock location for RX-7, but that's okay with the 13B because the exhaust is on the other side. But here, having exhaust on both sides, I just felt like that was a little bit more of a potential fire hazard that I didn't want to have to deal with. So anyways, moved it up here out of the way a little bit. It's still, kind of close to the headers, but it's not as close as it was. And I may try to make just some sort of simple little shield or something just to keep, some of the heat back from this fuel lines. But that was pretty much the best way I could come up with it. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I might put that filter on the back or run it underneath the car and just run the line up here, maybe move this regulator over to this side just to keep it that much more away, and as few connections as I can would be good. It's kind of either way. The more connections you have, true, yes, you might have more of a chance for more leaks, but at least you fix a section at a time. If you have just a solid hose and a leak there, then you're going to have to either cut and splice in a new piece of hose or make a new connection or run a whole new hose, and that just seems like more trouble than it's worth. Where, if I have a couple little connectors here and there, I can just replace a section at a time if I have an issue with that. So we'll see how that goes. The other little tidbit was the one thing the Terminator X does not come with, and I hope they change this in the future for other users, is the alternator wire, the exciter wire, if you will, for the alternator. It's supposed to be like a 5-volt source, I guess. That it doesn't come with a provision for that. So I was going to use the single wire from the other harness, and apparently you can put I think it's a 2 ohm resistor in line, and wire that in, which would have been fairly simple. That's no problem. But literally right now, it's just the time to. Radio Shacks are kind of hard to find now, and that would probably be one of the few places you could get it. They said you could hook up like a bulb somewhere, and that would take enough resistance out of the circuit, or I guess add enough resistance in the circuit to do the same thing. But I just didn't have time for that. And Holley makes the alternator wire kit. It was like $18 from Advanced Auto Parts, of all places. So ordered that online, so that's on there now. I don't know if you can see that, but it's basically just single wire coming out of the plug for the alternator. I'm trying to see what it looks like on the camera. Yeah, so just a single wire, and then resistor is in line right there. So I just have that wired into a 12-volt keyed on source from the factory body harness. So that was real simple to put in. And yeah, so that's all I got for right now. So right now I just have the lonely injectors just kind of hanging out there in the intake, waiting for their new fuel rail home. I was talking to, like I said, my buddy Cole in Canada, and he was saying that sorry, these lights are ridiculous. He was saying that these the fuel rails, the LS6 fuel rail, is still good for like 500 horsepower. These injectors are going down essentially in how much they deliver, but it's still enough for my power goals, which hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe will be somewhere around the 400 horsepower mark. I would love that. That'd be awesome. 350 I would still be happy with, but I really wanted a solid 400 NA, so we'll see how that goes with the cam and everything that's in this build. But we're very, very close. We're just at that working out the little bugs stage. I thought I was going to be right there at it, and I hope these injectors really help, and the fuel rail and stuff. It won't look as nice as billet injectors, or billet fuel rails, and green injectors, but I just want it to work and work reliably at this point. This weekend is LS Fest. My goal was to have the car running and drive it to LS Fest, but that's life. Some things that you make a goal, sometimes they don't happen, or they don't happen in the amount of time that you want them to happen, and that's just life, and that's okay. I just try to take it as, maybe the Almighty had his reasons for letting me run into these roadblocks. Maybe something catastrophic could have happened on the road. There could have been a wreck I could have been in, or whatever. And so these little issues have come up, and we're just working them out. So it is what it is. If I can at least get it running and driving before it gets snowy out, I guess I'll be satisfied for this year, because that was kind of the goal anyways, was to get it running and driving this year, and then next year worry about changing the way it looks and stuff like that. But it's been a lot of fun to build, and we've come very, very far, and hopefully we're on the home stretch. I know I've been saying that for a long time, but these little issues come up. You put an engine and transmission and a whole hodgepodge of parts in a car that none of them belong together, and try to make them work nicely. That's just how it goes sometimes. So for anyone that says, LS swaps are easy, LS swaps are cheap, we will have a episode in the future, once everything is done on this car, of kind of a cost breakdown. Now again, this wasn't just an engine swap. I mean, this was pretty much a resto mod. So we did, if you recall, we did brakes, we did suspension, we did bushings in the rear subframe, we did a Turbo 2 diff, we did a custom one-piece drive shaft, we did a Z32 transmission with a custom adapter plate, we did basically all new gaskets and seals, and brake lines and clutch lines and electrical, and now we're on our second engine harness and engine management setup. And I'm sure there'll be other changes along the way. These projects are never officially done, but it's kind of one of those things. It's like it's expensive and it's upsetting sometimes and it's frustrating during the build. But once it's all working and sorted out, like that's what you're going for, is that sweet, sweet victory at the end of all the trouble. So hopefully we'll be there soon. Oh, I was going to show you. I added some. The turn signals for these S5 bumpers are getting harder and harder to find, and they're very expensive. But I found some Switchback LED. They're like daytime running lights when you're in, headlights are on or parking lights are on, and then they switch to amber for turn signals. So I just thought that was kind of a fun. They almost fit the hole. They're just kind of mounted in there with zip ties right now. I've got to make some sort of recessed bracket to kind of hold them still, but I thought that was kind of fun. I got the headlights wired in finally. I got this turn signal wired. I got to do the other side. So I'll get it, buttoned up enough to be street legal, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm still curious to see what it's going to be like to have this thing, emissions tested. It's old enough to where they probably won't even worry about looking underneath it for cats, because there won't be any to be found. This part of Indiana is kind of weird because it's basically part of Chicagoland, because we're right next to the Illinois border, and it's one of 2 counties in the whole state of Indiana that requires emissions. From some of the people I've talked to, it'll have to be tested, but they don't necessarily put it on the dyno and put a sniffer in the tailpipe. Sometimes they just do a visual inspection and scan the VIN, and you're good to go. Kind of like New York or Chicago or other places for older vehicles that require emissions. It's just kind of not really a super in-depth test. Whereas an OBD2 car, they plug it in and the computer tells them if it's good to go or not. So we shall see. That's all I have for right now. Just want to give you guys a little update. Let's see. I'm going Monday to help my friend Andrew down in South Indiana work on his NSX. So since I'm waiting on parts anyways, there's not really a whole lot I can do on this thing Monday. So I kind of need a change of scenery anyways, because I've pretty much just been work, home, work, home, work, home. So I was talking to him the other day, and he was saying he could really use some help and someone with a welder and to do this and that on his build. So I was like, I'm off Monday. How about I bring my welder and some tools, and we have a good old-fashioned day in the garage working on your project. Take a little break from mine and get out of my town for a little while. So he's excited. He's looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing his progress on the car. I know he's been really, really excited about it, and it's been his dream build. So that's going to be fun to do those together, and maybe sometime next year roll together with our cars to some sort of meet or get together somewhere, or just to have them done, just to have the camaraderie. That's part of this, the upsetness that's been happening with this COVID thing, is the people have been on lockdown. A lot of people have been able to work on their project cars like me, which is awesome, but it's been by myself, like no friends coming over to hang out and crack a few beers and work on the car together and joke around. Like, it's just been me either, late at night after work like this, or, using some off days, a million trips to the auto parts store, hardware store, you name it. It's still fun, it's still exciting, but it's kind of one of those things, as a car person, it's more fun and exciting when you have other people doing it with you. But anyways, I don't want to ramble. I just want to give you guys an update. Project's still going. It's just, like I said, when I went back to work in June, it's slowed down a lot, but we still have made lots of progress. If I can get it running here soon, then I will try my best to tie up the wiring inside and make it look nice, because right now the Holley box is just sitting on the floor. It's wired up correctly according to the instructions, but it still needs to be mounted and wires tucked away and, make it look nice. And put a passenger seat in there, and seat belts. Well, the seat belts are in there. Put the passenger seat in there and go for a rip. So you guys take care. Like the channel. Hopefully you like this video. Hopefully you'll watch some of the older videos and watch some of the build process, and listen to me yammer for hours on end about everything I've ran into with this project. And yeah, so if you don't mind, like, subscribe, hit the little bell, and we'll see you in the next one.